Welcome to Don't Quote Me on That. One day we will have an intro, but today is not that day.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm Kalina, and welcome back to Don't Quote Me on That, where we kind of talk about movies. We are back in the car, we're back on the road, we are back driving to our jobs. So, I hope everyone had a lovely time. From last week, we chit chatted about A Lesson in Romantics by Mayday Parade. Good to know. Thank you to everyone who commented and shared their thoughts and whatnot. Good to know, some of the things I pulled out and thought about were ideas you guys hadn't thought about. So, that's nice. Anyway, this week we are talking about some new music, which is nice, but kind of in a similar vein to Mayday Parade, the pop punk scene, early 2000s, whatnot. And today we're talking about Set It Off's self-titled album, which came out last Friday, I want to say, the 7th. I don't remember what today is, but I think it was last Friday, the 7th. So Set It Off formed in 2008 in Tampa, Florida. So got some good music coming out of the Florida scene, it seems. And their current lineup is 3 people. We've got Cody Carson, their lead vocalist, Zach DeWall on bass and guitar, so pulling double duty, love that, and Max Danziger on drums. And I am allowed a couple tangents in episodes. My first tangent for this episode is I don't follow band members closely. Like when I like a band's music, I just follow. Like I just listen to whenever they have music put out. So for whatever reason, I was on Instagram a couple months ago, ended up on Max's Instagram, and your man, like your one is just a wrestler now. Like that's his side gig. But I just think that's a hilarious lineup is professional drummer in a band, a touring band, wrestler on the side. But seems to be working for him. Seems happy. He got really really buff out of nowhere. So, and I think it works for like the vibe that this new era has. So whatever. Anyway, Set It Off was signed to I think they were signed to Equal Vision Records originally, and this was like around 2011 2012, and then they were signed to Fearless Records. I don't know when that switch happened, but in 2023 they left Fearless Records and they went independent. So this is their first independently released project, and I definitely think you can tell as we talk about the music a little bit, there's a clear shift in sound, and I think part of the overarching sound is because they're independent now. And also something I think is important to note is that Cody Carson does, I wrote down the majority of their songwriting. I know for their first album, for sure, he did all the songwriting, although it was based on his experiences and the other band members' experiences, but he did all the actual songwriting. I couldn't find much information about this album, I think partly because it was released independently and partly because it's so fresh. Like I saw a couple reviews, but like there wasn't a Wikipedia page about it or anything. So I would venture to say he does all of the songwriting from what I know about them, and he like really spearheads. I know there's social media now as well, but since I don't have confirmation on it, we will just say he does the majority of the songwriting. So the self-titled album is their 6th studio album, I believe. So a good discography to back this up. It's not like their first foray, not like 2 or 3 albums in and they're still new and trying to figure out their sound. They have been a band for a while. They've put out quite a few projects. They've toured a lot. They've done a lot of stuff. So they, I think for the most part, are honed in as a band. And one thing I do really like from what I've seen, not just in this album cycle, but in general, is they talk a lot about, or I've seen them talk about how they think part of the reason the band works so well is because they're genuinely friends, and how they didn't realize that a lot of bands, like it's quite literally just like a job they clock in for. They go to practice, they do a tour, and they leave, and they don't really talk to each other outside of that. And I think it was Cody Carson saying this specifically. They are like they want to hang out with each other. They talk to each other all the time. Like this band is built from their friendship first, which is something Ellen and I have talked about in terms of 5 Seconds of Summer. I think that's what bleeds through that music more than anything else. Is it's a bunch of guys who care deeply for each other and are just trying to have fun, and that really does come across in the music that they make. To a lesser extent, I think in this band, not because I think they're less friends than 5 Seconds of Summer are, but I just think because of the general topics that Set It Off tackles versus 5 Seconds of Summer. But I do like when you can tell band members like each other. It's in the same vein as I like when band members play their own instruments. It just adds a extra layer of authenticity and something special to the music. This album is 12 tracks of what I dubbed metal, not dubbed, what I consider to be metalcore from my understanding of metalcore, and definitely like alt rock punk area. We've definitely shifted from the pop punk music Set It Off used to make. They used to be a lot poppier. This is much less, I think, commercially and radio friendly in a way that again feels very authentic and I think can work for them. And something that I saw when I was doing my little bit of research, which I actually read more than just a Wikipedia article this time, but that's that Cody Carson said, at least I don't know if it was about the album as a whole, but he definitely said, at least in relation to one song, that this was for like 19-year-old Cody who was learning how to write songs for the first time. So I do like that. Again, we're coming back to the base of friendship. We're coming back to the base of like doing this for myself and to encourage and amplify myself. I also read somewhere else that this was Set It Off as they wanted to be heard and like wanted their sound to be, because it's the first time they're fully independent. So they have no outside influences on said sound. It's just them. So while I do think their previous work read very honestly, this does feel more honest because they're not trying. I guess it's less about the marketing and more about what music do we want to make and what does that sound like. And I think a band does best when they find the line that exists between the music they want to make and the music that their fans want to listen to. Obviously, especially when you're signed to a label, you have these other influences. You have to be marketable in a way. You want to get new fans. But I think when you can balance that line of this genuine experience and desire to make music in this way and almost service to the people who support you and help you have that career, you find like a very, very sweet spot in which good music comes out of. And I think undoubtedly you will then attract new fans because the authenticity and the intention shines through very well. For my first criticism of this album, however, it is the album art. It's a little disappointing. I think Set It Off has fantastic visuals throughout their whole career. They really have. And even leading up to this project, they didn't set out to write an album, is how they phrased it. Is they were just releasing singles. They went independent in 2023. They were just releasing singles till they felt like they had enough to create an album and create a good album, and then put a few extra unreleased songs on here, which is true. Like I said, this is 12 tracks. I think 6 or 7 of the tracks had been released already throughout that 2-year period. And I want to start talking about the tracks before we get into the themes that Set It Off normally covers. So we will start with track number 1, which is Pathological. Aside from being the opener of this album, Pathological is also the last single they released before this album came out. Very punchy, very loud, very clear shift in sound from their last album, which was Elsewhere, I believe. Elsewhere that era was very pop arty and pastel colors and bright and in your face and absurd, kind of Beetlejuice-esque is how I would describe it. This is full 180, dark and deep and emo, in not like a music way, but just like emo, you know? Pathological is about friends taking advantage of your kindness. Saw Cody Carson speak on this in a TikTok yesterday. Actually, he posted it yesterday. And he said that basically he found out, like another friend told him that a friend was taking advantage of him being kind and trusting. And he's like, it's something that like I don't want to not be kind and trusting. I don't want to become jaded in that way. But when you are too trusting and too kind, people look for opportunities to exploit that, essentially. So that's what Pathological is about. And the through line, the chorus, the premise of the song is you lie, 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 like it's pathological. As we get into this, I will say lyrically, I do not think this is their strongest album, which is disappointing as a fan of Set It Off. I think Cody Carson is a phenomenal songwriter. I talk all the time about Dad's Song, which is off of, I don't know, it's off of one of their like their first or second album. so early Set It Off. But it's a song he wrote for his dad who passed away. And I saw him discussing it in an interview one time, and he was explaining basically how he would never truly feel done with that song because of who it was for and the message of the song and the content. He could write it forever and it never be done. So at a certain point, he just had to let it go and print the album. So I just like that insight into the songwriting experience. But I think he's a phenomenal songwriter, and I just do not think this holds up. It's good, it's fine. It's very much in line with Set It Off's other work, but it's not as much of an evolution or like a maturity or maturing in their lyricism. However, what I do really enjoy in this song, and I think throughout the album as a whole, is it starts off with this very atmospheric sound. They're setting the scene. It's not just the music, and I don't really know how to explain it because it's not an actual like identifiable sound. It's kind of white noise esque, but it's something that I think would do really really well to start your show off. So this is a great concert crowd song. Is before they come out on stage, like just to extend this opening bit and really let that tension build before they come out and come into the first verse of Pathological. The best way I could describe it is it reminds me of NF's music, that Christian rapper. If you know, you know. I don't know. He does like a lot of, I think, mechanical, not man-made, like computer generated sounds, and not in a bad way, but it just in a way to like set the scene to create this atmosphere of like very very empty room, empty warehouse, these like liminal spaces but on a darker edge. I'm picturing it, so I hope you're also picturing it. They've also in this song introduced this robotic type voice effect, a la later Bring Me the Horizon, like newer Bring Me the Horizon stuff. It reminds me of mantra. That's what it is. You always, I don't know, chant the same mantra, and like how Ollie's voice gets deeper. There's that robotic like lady talking over it, very like mechanical. And my favorite line in this song is, "How do you sleep on that bed you built from debris?" And the following line is, "Of bridges you're burning." So I think that's a good example of their lyricism. I think Cody Carson is a very, very good lyricist. I do not think that shines through as well in this album. We definitely get some evolution in other ways. We do test and try out a bunch of different genres and a bunch of different elements in this album. In this song, Cody Carson's rapping. I personally do not care for it. I like that we are trying new things. I think we really go all the way. And this is some of Zach and Max's best work without a doubt. Like they really, really do drive this album for me. I just and so I think the rapping could work. I just think we're not putting it in the right. This I just when the rapping starts, I'm like, why are we doing this right now? The other thing is also that Cody Carson is an insanely good vocalist. I compare him to Brendan Urie. The things that man can do with his voice, either one of them really is crazy. And Cody Carson's also like classically trained flutist or clarinet player or something like that. Like he went to school for it for a year before he dropped out to be in the band. And he does cover. He like at least a while back he used to do covers on YouTube, and he did a cover of "I Knew Your Trouble." He did "Call Me Maybe." He did more recently, like 2023 probably, cover of that song from a Goofy movie. He did some Bruno. He did "That's What I Like" by Bruno Mars, and he's just going up and down the scales effortlessly. He sounds so effortless when he sings. I do not think he needs to rap. I think he could deliver things so much more powerfully if he didn't do that. However, I think it's a perfect song to showcase their evolution, open up this new era, which I think was called the. It began with the D. Don't remember right now, but I think it's a perfect song to showcase their new sound. They're taking a very big step being independent. So I think this song is perfect to highlight, hey, we're different now, we're on our own, we've got a new sound going. Here's what's up. All right. I'm gonna apologize in advance for any potential mic difficulties. I don't know. There's always like a feedbacky sound. I can't figure out why that is. I've taken it off of my shirt in an attempt to address the issue. TBD. We'll see if it works. Track number 2, Punching Bag. This is very much like older Set It Off vibes. I do think this came out in 2023, so this makes sense. This was like fresh at the start of their independent era, like very much like their last album Elsewhere. So it feels fresh. Something I think I said the same thing honestly for Mayday Parade, but I think that Set It Off does a really, really good job. They exist very well in that pocket of pop punk, very heavy on the pop side, in the sense that they are very upbeat, very cheery, very much into the lyrics and sound. Like there being like a very clear difference between the two, and that kind of being the reason the music works so well. And just kind of getting into the themes of the album and the themes of Set It Off as a band overall, is they address emotions that I think are not discussed or, for lack of a better word, celebrated generally, especially in media. I think anger is an emotion we are taught to be ashamed of, and told like it's not a good thing to feel or express. But sometimes, like, you're angry about something, and bottling up an emotion is not going to make it feel any better and make it go away. So Set It Off really tap into that part of you, that like vindictive side of you that just really wants to tell someone to fuck off, or tell someone, just tell someone about themselves, like that part of you that's been betrayed or hurt or wants to get revenge. They really, really give that side of you a chance to express itself, essentially. And I think that's why, despite any criticisms I may have about this album in particular, their music will always be very cathartic. It's always going to be something that I will want to listen to. Like I'll get one of their songs stuck in my head, even if it's not my favorite song by them, even if I don't think it's like a strong song. I will always have a desire to return to Set It Off's discography. My favorite line in this song is, "I'd rather set myself on fire than let you win," which just really encapsulates my point pretty well. Well, this is not my favorite song on the album. I do think this encapsulates. I think this song is a really good example of Set It Off at their best. And I don't want to say, oh, I don't like their new sound at all. They should return to their old sound, because this is definitely an evolution from Elsewhere. It's definitely a step forward in the direction they want to go in. But I also do think that having a little bit more middle ground between the sound of Parasite and the sound of Elsewhere is where Punching Bag exists. I think Zach DeWall's guitar skills on this song are absolutely phenomenal. He's like really showing off in this one. And then I also think it kind of, another reason it works is it loops back into old Set It, like early days Set It Off, with a choir vocal. Set It Off love a choir vocal, like a very clap along. If you know their song Why Worry, that sound to me is like quintessential Set It Off. We get some elements of that here in Punching Bag. There's like an instrumental break towards the end of the song, and he says, "So say goodbye to your Mr. Nice Guy," which is the chorus of the song. And it builds in. It's like, just like, again, these layered choir vocals, you can clap along to it. So I just really love when bands bridge their old sound or old themes, old imagery into their new stuff, because one, I think it is good for the fans, and two, I think it gives you a really, really clear idea about how that band or that specific writer conceptualizes the things that they write about. Also, speaking about writing, I know earlier I said that I was pretty sure Cody wrote this whole album by himself. I was watching an interview today, took a little break between talking about the first song and now. And so I was watching an interview he did today, and he said that he did work with a team of writers. So that's going to come up in a little bit later in a different song, but I just wanted to update my previous statement. That's it. Correct my previous statement. I did write down that this song, Punching Bag, did not have much evolution lyrically. However, considering at the time I wasn't considering the fact that it was written pretty much right after Elsewhere in that 2023 frame, so that would explain why there is a little bit, just not as big of an evolution as I would have been expecting had this song been written 2 years later. So after Punching Bag, we get into a later single, which is Rotten. That's track number 3 on this. I like, I think probably out of all the singles they released, I like Rotten the best, from what I can remember. And Rotten brings in a slightly reoccurring theme, I'll say. I noticed it at least on a couple of songs. This idea of like, kind of like one the person that's betraying you, the evil person in this scenario, eating you alive, being like a creature that is attacking you with their teeth, something like they chew you up and spit you out. And also another kind of theme and imagery around candy and sweets and sugar. Like the ending line in the chorus of this song is "and your candy coated blade underneath." So like you're hiding your true intentions and your evil nature under all this sweetness, but I'm not falling for it. I also think that the perspective that Cody Carson and his team of song and his songwriters that he works with, not necessarily team, but the perspective that Cody Carson writes from approaches being betrayed and being hurt by someone from a variety of different like phases within that. I think about it almost like the stages of grief. Is sometimes he's addressing it as like he's first realizing he's being betrayed, which I think Parasite is kind of along those lines. And then there's ones where we've kind of accepted we're being betrayed, and now we're in more of like a revenge stage. And also kind of third party POV almost, in the sense that not necessarily you've betrayed me, but looking around at this person or these people and realizing the way they treat other people in their lives and noticing the patterns in that sense. And I do know that Cody Carson said some of this album had to deal with, like, specifically in the industry, but like nowadays it's really hard to find something real and authentic and honest in the people that they deal with on a day to day basis. Like everyone's trying to get money from you or get an opportunity from you, and it's really hard to feel any sort of, I can't think of what the opposite of animosity is, but it's hard to feel that for people on a general scale. But also going back to that earlier quote I mentioned, which is that he doesn't want to become so jaded and not be a trusting person anymore. I like that Rotten also incorporated the heavier sound vocally. So far up to this point, the heavier sound has come solely from Zach and Max's efforts, and Cody was, I mean, adding a little bit of those elements, but definitely still on the pop punkier side vocally. Here, I definitely think he like adopts some more of the new genre they're trying to get into. He's got some growls. I wouldn't call it quite screaming, but like a Fry vocal scream belt sort of vibe he has going on in this song and a couple other ones. And I just want you to remember this point of leaning into the wolf metaphor. So I talked about, they conceptualize this evil person as someone who's like eating them, chewing them up and spitting them out. And I really wish we had leaned more into our wolf metaphor, because there's a song on this album later, which if you've been a Set It Off fan and heard their music before, you will know. And I think that would have again been another really good connection to like older Set It Off, which I think would have provided some depth that I find this album needs. But also I think it would have, the lyrics and the concept of the song wouldn't have felt so, I'm gonna say the word theatrical, and I don't mean theatrical in like a theater kid way for the most part. I think Set It Off is very theatrical in their delivery and their visual, like their concepts and their like eras they go into, in a like Ice Nine Kills way. Set It Off is informed by the context and the media which they consume and exist in, if that makes sense. Like in the same way that Ice Nine Kills writes their albums and their songs based on horror movies, I feel like Set It Off is very much informed by the genres that they are dabbling in this album. And that means accepting even the parts of it that to an outsider might seem cringe. And I'm saying this as someone who loves these genres. I remember like being in middle school and early like high school and listening to Sleeping with Sirens and Pierce the Veil and like the screaming that was going on, and how my peers viewed that. It's I'm not going to say I was embarrassed by it, but it wasn't exactly like I was volunteering to hop on Ox when we were hanging out, you know? And so I think they really embrace all of that and have no shame about the fact that this is what they enjoy. This is the stuff they like to listen to, and they love creating music. And that everything stemming from that really, really makes their projects as a whole really fun to listen to and really authentic and genuine. I just feel like in this new era, and I do think it's because they've gone independent, they're just trying to find a way to polish their sound. it does kind of veer into the musical theater, cringy side of being theatrical, but that's not a bad thing. That's just growing pains. I think that Cody, Max, and Zach are very clear on what their sound is. I just think in this new endeavor and as an independent band now, they have to find a way to polish it. But back to the lyrics and this wolf metaphor, which we lean into. In the song, he says, bite down, and they say something about like a bloody mess you leave when you eat. So, there's, again, imagery around candy and being chewed up and spit out, and how really you're just rotten, like you're hiding blades and this rot and this evil demeanor behind a candy floss, candy coated facade. After this, we flow into a new song in that it's from this new era and hadn't been released as a single before, and that is Switch. Vocally, instrumentally, love this song. As I said earlier, I think Set It Off do a good job with the sad lyrics, poppy sound, or angry lyrics, poppy sound, like the dichotomy between those two. This is another like really good example of that, and that's the skill they have in that area, because the premise of the song is about someone who's like switching up on you, and you like never know what side of them you're going to get. They kind of keep you on your toes, but not in a good way. And it's like stressful dealing with someone like that, where you don't know, are they going to be upset with you today, are you going to get yelled at, like which way an interaction with them is going to go. And because someone switching up on you can happen so quickly, they have a few moments in this song where they switch up the instrumentals, they switch up the vocals very quickly, and also that the song balances the sides of anger and like basically essentially a bad interaction, a good interaction with someone, where Cody is kind of vocally the good interaction. He's very light, he's like running through the song in a way that's fun to listen to. But if you listen to the instrumentals of the song separated, it's very angry, it's very emotional and upsetting, for want of a better word. And then even within the vocal performance itself, Cody Carson at the start of the song is very soft vocally, and by the end he's giving you these fry vocals, these screamish vocals that we discussed in the last song. There's also a moment in the song, and I just unfortunately cannot remember the specifics of it right now, where he's Cody sings a line, but it cuts off very harshly, in my opinion, the way he ends that line. And I thought that connected really well to like how quickly someone's switching up on you and how almost heart stopping it can be, at least in the context I imagine Set It Off's music takes place in. Because again, as a whole, their discography is very much about being betrayed, exacting revenge, feeding that not so morally good and pleasant side of yourself. I also think that Set It Off is a band that's meant to be heard live. There's some artists where, yes, you want to hear them live because you love that artist, or you want to hear them live because some of their songs might hit better live. But I think Set It Off's discography as a whole is meant to be in a room full of people screaming their lungs out and getting feelings off of their chest. I'm also just upset that this song is not was like not a single. I think this would have been a beautiful single. I think I get maybe towards the end not so commercially radio friendly. And I also don't understand how we pick singles, especially as an independent band off a label. Is the purpose of a single to draw in new fans? Is it to give a good sense of the album as a whole, the new era as a whole? Is it to get radio play so just more people hear your music and hopefully you scoop a few of them up as new fans? So I would like to know in general what the decision making process on that is like, and especially with Set It Off in this new era where they're making music purely for themselves in the best way. I just think this is really fun, and it's more similar to some older Set It Off than maybe some of the singles they did pick, which I think makes it more marketable and more single appropriate. And my favorite line in this song is, "Cause when it's on, you're so damn good to me." And speaking of like someone like, so damn good to me, this also kind of brings back in some sweetness, sugar imagery that we had in Rotten, and also the like razor blade, because he says something about a box of razor blades, something something and like the sweetest things that you say. So again, this person dressing up their evil intentions, their poor intentions as something nice and lovely and digestible. This theme of essentially like being fake trends into the next song, which is called coincidentally "Fake Ass Friends." And this is coming from the point of view I discussed of like third person, where it's not necessarily someone's betraying you or doing evil unto you specifically, but the way they deal with and interact with other people in their life kind of clues you into the type of person they are. And this person we're singing about is not only fake in their group of friends, but is in a group of people that are all equally fake and unpleasant. As this album progresses, it definitely gets stronger vocally. Again, Cody Carson is just an insanely good vocalist. I was listening to the cover he did with Our Last Night of Bye 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 by NSYNC. Beautiful, wonderful, no notes. I would listen to that man sing as anything he wanted, and he does such fun things. He genre hops even in his covers and brings. Oh, something else I think he does really well that I forgot to mention is he never goes in the path you expect him to. Specifically when he's doing these covers, I was listening to his cover of "I Knew You Were Trouble" by Taylor Swift today, and when he gets to the bridge and those like that final chorus, I'd expect him to start screaming because it is a pop goes punk cover of this song essentially. But he doesn't. He continues to carry these like lighter, I don't remember the technically correct term, but like higher vocals for the song, and he lets his vocals still exist. I think in the same space that the original song did, whereas instrumentally that's where it gets its depth, that's where it gets its heaviness, that's where the genre shifts. So when they write music, I also feel like they don't take the path you expect. And it works really well. Just sometimes it's a little bit jarring. Like I said in the first song, I don't know why we were rapping. It's not that I hate it. I don't think it was a bad decision. Just not what I was expected. And I personally feel a better decision could have been made. But like I also can't sing and would never write an album. So take my thoughts with a grain of salt, you know? Like I would say Max Danziger is top three, like my top three favorite drummers of all time. Zach DeWall has helped me find a new appreciation for guitar because I always thought guitar playing was overrated. Of course, everyone loves the guitar. Everyone loves a guitar player. He really like I think showcases the skill and that I can appreciate in a way that I can appreciate. And again, Cody Carson's just singing his way through life beautifully. So while I think their sound crystallizes very well in some songs on this album, as a whole, I really wish they had streamlined it a little bit more. But also, like, if it felt like the right time for them, I don't feel like anything in this album feels inauthentic or disingenuous or like it was put out for any other reason than this is music they're proud of making. And at the end of the day, I believe that's more important than any of the other things. And speaking of being genuine, I also think their music taps into pretty universal experiences when you're figuring out how someone moves and they're moving kind of funny, you know. And my favorite line in the song is he says, "Such a charming way to lie," and you're just kind of realizing like this person like throwing you under the bus for to improve their social status. They're just not trustworthy, and no matter the scale, at the end of the day, everybody is not going to gel with everybody, and you find people who move in ways that you do not like, you do not appreciate, and you do not want to associate yourself with. What I do want to associate myself with, however, is this next song, which is my favorite on the album, and that is What's in It for Me. I've seen some discussions online about this album since it's come out. I cannot believe this song is not talked about more. Everyone talks about Switch, everyone talks about some of the other singles that have already been released. I think What's in It for Me is by far the best song of this album. It's just a masterpiece of a song to me. Like I added this song to my playlist before I'd even reached the end of the song. I think I got like 30 seconds, maybe a minute in, and I was like, nope, this is you're coming home with me. I fear in this album, Set It Off is suffering from what Eleanor calls 1D disease, where the singles on the album are the worst songs on the album. I don't think they were the worst songs on the album. I just think there were very clear, better picks for singles. Switch should have been a single. What's in it for me should have been a single. As we discussed earlier, Cody Carson said that he is generally very trusting at something he prides himself on, and he doesn't want to become too jaded. This song, however, feels like the moment you become jaded. You're like, you've been betrayed one too many times. You've been taken advantage of one too many times. And my favorite line in the song highlights this really well. It must sting to have no effect on me. So you got away with it before, but it's not working for you now, and how like the tables have turned almost. We also return to some, I'm gonna say, carnivorous energy to simplify my thought. That idea of like being chewed up and spit out again, which is why I wish we'd lean into this wolf example. And I think the full line in Rotten is like, bite down, feel the blood in the roof of your mouth, something like that. But in this song, he says, "Take it all, leave nothing on the bone." So not only are you chewing me up and spitting me out, but you're leaving nothing. There's nothing left for me to gain any benefit from. Just this song is really really fun. If I could recommend any song on this album, it would be "What's in It for Me." My underrated king. And now we are our narrator for this album, let's say, as someone who's become jaded, who's connected the dots on someone's behavior. We roll into the next track, which is Evil People. An element that's been incorporated a few times in this album, but that I've identified the easiest or the most in this song, is this sort of echoey muffle effect, static feedback, kind of sound like you're talking through an old timey radio effect on the vocals in some parts of the song. The one line I noted it down that he used it on is, he goes, "You're just evil people," and then the effect comes in, and I don't trust a single fucking one of you. And it's kind of like, it almost creates some distance between him and the listener, but in a way that I feel creates almost this alter ego. Again, going back to that idea that I think Set It Off touch on this very universal emotion of anger, but it's also some anger is not something we are taught to feel, are told it's good to feel. There's some shame around that. So you have to almost tap into this alter ego, this other you, in order to express that emotion. I also think by creating this distance between the vocals and the listener, it almost heightens the emotion in the same way that, like, that brief pause before a jump scare on a horror movie does. You know, the music's building, you can hear in the background there's some tension, and it almost goes dead silent right before the jump scare happens. Mr. Carson then brings some more of his A game vocally towards the end of the song. I just wish this had been showcased a little bit more throughout the album as a whole. I think that's a standout feature of this band is Cody Carson's voice. It's very identifiable. The interview I saw him doing today, the interviewer said that, I think it was like 94 point something. It was a radio Zoom interview he did. And the guy was like, "I every time you Set It Off comes on the radio, I know it Set It Off because of your voice." I would argue that a Set It Off song is identifiable for all of its elements individually or put together, but because Cody Carson's voice is so unique and so versatile, it's definitely like a standout feature of the band. Also, his lyricism, again, I definitely think they've had stronger lyrics, but I can't say that there wasn't effort put into this album. My favorite lyric in this song is "Every saint could be a sinner." So kind of simple, but I just like the way it's delivered. I like that line. I like this exploration of multiple genres. I think here I identified that I think I would have preferred had each song explored a different genre, and then maybe had one element of another genre in there. But I feel like they were exploring 3-4 genres per song, which, again, because that sounds not quite polished yet, didn't work for me. I as I go through this album and talk about these songs more, I definitely think that being a fan of Set It Off previously, or yeah, being a fan of Set It Off has put me at a bit of a detriment for this album, just because I know what a polished sound from them looks like. So I'm enjoying this album. I just wish some elements were refined a little bit more. But I do think whatever they put out next will be more refined. So that will be interesting and fun to see. So I think at this point, the universe must have heard me saying I heard me lamenting old Set It Off and the polished sound they had, because this next track is Wolf in Sheep's Clothing Reborn, which is a re recording of a song from, don't tell me, Off Duality, which is from like 2014, I want to say. This was a single before. I think, if I recall correctly, they released this last year, so like 10-year anniversary. Wolf in Sheep's Clothing Reborn. It's the same as Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. It's just like a little bit heavier, and also my favorite part of the song is at the beginning. In the original one, he goes, "This song is about you." So in this re-recording, in the reborn version, he says, "This is still about you." I remember when it first came out, everyone was like, who is this person that upset Cody Carson so much that 10 years later he's still like, this song is still about you." I think this should have been the opener to this album. I think Wolf in Sheep's Clothing Reborn is the perfect example of a song you like know without a doubt your fans will love, but also an introduction to your new sound, because this is, I think, if not the most popular Set It Off song, one of the most popular Set It Off songs. This is a crowd favorite, crowd pleaser. I think even non Set It Off fans have heard the song and like this song. So just introducing the same song everybody already loves with this heavier sound that you're going for, but not quite as heavy or experimental as the rest of the album, would have been the perfect way to start off your new era and your new sound. Especially because there's these nice metal elements, I think, in the bridge, and so it would have bridged, pun intended, the two eras together very nicely. It also highlights the evolution in the sound really, really well, because again, obviously you're taking something familiar and flipping it on its head a little bit, but it still does have familiar elements. It's almost like if you're cooking a dish your mom always cooked, but you season it a little bit differently. The foundation is there. You know this, you love this, but you're trying something new and expanding it a little bit. It also highlights those quintessential Set It Off themes we discussed, because if Set It Off are nothing else, they are haters. They are Kendrick Lamar level haters. 10 years later, and you are singing a song about someone, the same person, because you let us know at the start it's about the same person, with the same level and almost more vitriol than the first time. I never want to be on Cody Carson's wrong side. I saw some criticisms about this album. The reviews I saw were lukewarm or really, really harsh, and I don't think it deserved either of those two receptions. But any faults I found in it, or anything in those poorer or less forgiving reviews, we'll say, that I found I identified with in any way, is just a little bit of what I refer to as main character syndrome, which is just when you're reading like a fantasy book, especially like a Harry Potter or uh, Twilight, or I don't know, Vampire Academy, if that's the right one. It's like this many things can't happen to one person. Like this many crazy things can't happen to this one person all the time, right? And so some of the reviews I saw complained about like basically they were saying they needed to grow up, because like how are you still getting hurt by these people and you've never learned how to deal with your emotions, blah blah blah, things along those lines. And it's like, okay, how many people have betrayed Cody Carson in his life, or betrayed this band in their lives? But at the same time, it's like, it's these little things add up. Sometimes you just gotta crash out, and it's not like one. Okay, I dropped my water bottle getting into the car and I crash out. My water bottle falling out of my hands isn't what made me crash out, but I'm sure there was 50 other things, and I was just number 51 that sent me into a spiral. So it's not like Cody Carson or this band is at fault for being betrayed and being hurt and being angry at people not treating them right. It's just like these little things add up. Like you talk about fake ass friends or evil people on this album, and it's like, oh yeah, it's not about one specific scenario or one specific person, but like I'm just seeing a trend in these people not being genuine, not being nice, just using you to their own advantage, chewing you up and discarding you. Also, I just think this is Carson's best work vocally. He sounds insane. The bridge is very, very heavy in the song, obviously much heavier than the original, but just very heavy in this song in general. and his vocals just I they like skip skip their way, they swing their way, they're just up and down, they're sliding the scales. I don't know how to describe it. He sounds wonderful. Again, why are we rapping on other songs if you can do this, Mr. Carson? I get it, but I don't get it. This album also, this song, both this version and the original version, do something I like, which is kind of like almost bastardized, like very common musical references. In this case, it's like a nursery rhyme about Jack and Jill. What do they do? Go up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Anyway, in the song, he's talking about like being betrayed by this specific person, and in the song, it's a woman, and he says, he's basically like Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, like Jack watch out, because he says Jill's a little W word, and her alibis are turning tricks. And then he kind of turns it on its head in another verse as well. So fun track. I think some of their best work. I think it really highlights the staying power and endurance of Set It Off as a band. I think it's a hard track to follow up. I think they follow it up very, very well with track number 9, which is Vicious Cycle. I again would have started the album with Wolf in Sheep's Clothing Reborn. I think this would have made a beautiful track number 2. This is kind of like right after you figured out or you've seen someone's true colors and you're not in denial about it, but you're playing dumb. You're kind of letting them see, kind of trying to see what else they're gonna try and get away with, and letting them have it, and letting them think they got one over on you. My favorite line in this song is, "I'm pretending I can't see the writing on the wall." So very much like, I know who you are, but I'm gonna let you, like, I'm gonna give you the rope to hang yourself with. The elements of this song are also very indicative of a Set It Off song to me. It's very upbeat, even in the depths of your anger. I think there's a peace that comes with accepting your anger and letting yourself process it. I heard or read somewhere a long time ago that, like, in order to get past an emotion, you have to go through it. I can't go over it. I can't avoid it entirely because if I do, it's always going to be in my rear view. I have to go through that emotion in order to be rid of it forever. So the sort of peace that comes once you've acknowledged your anger and gone through it and processed it, now I can leave it in my past and be a peaceful person. Their music highlights this very, very well. The polish of this album is something that's come up a few times in this album review. I think this song could feel more fully realized. I mean, this album was 2 years in the making, so I would expect a bit more, I don't know, realization on this song. But despite all of that, I really enjoyed it. It's one of my favorites. And speaking of favorites on the album, track number 10 is another favorite of mine, and that is Creating Monsters. This is a song that I saw a lot of people online really enjoy. They hyped it up as like one of the best songs on the album. Obviously, this is a very strong second half album for me. What I love most about this song is I think they cracked the code on exploring multiple genres within a song in Creating Monsters. The most noticeable, and I think just because it's such a jarring shift from the other genres they explore, is the song is very jazzy, and at one point it even samples a Duke Ellington song, which is "It Don't Mean a Thing." So Set It Off is kind of like both the friend that's in the fight and the friend that's on the sidelines egging you on in the fight. And beyond exploring and incorporating multiple genres very well, it also incorporates these ambient, atmospheric sounds very well at the start. Again, the song's very jazzy. It kind of has this like carnival circus background noise going on to start the song. And then at one point he says, I hear the screams, and in the background you hear screaming, but it sounds, again, in this carnival theme, almost like people on a ride screaming, not necessarily like a horror scream. So I like that little element, how it still got the point across, but in within the context of the song. This song also explores a negative emotion, but instead of anger, it's anxiety. And it's talking about like when you deal Cody Carson, another Carson quote is that like when you're dealing with anxiety, it's like people can't see this panic attack you're having. They can't see the anxiety or what's causing the anxiety. So it's like you're creating monsters that no one else can see, which is the chorus of the song. And dealing with that. And he said that like he said something about the fans and like people who experience anxiety will appreciate the song, and like how it's a little not corny, that wasn't the word he used, but something along those lines. And like, if we can laugh at it and make fun of ourselves, it's a little bit easier to process and deal with. Unfortunately, the next song wowed me a little bit less, and that is Parasite, which was another single. This is very much where I was like, yeah, they're suffering from quote unquote 1D disease. It's a fine song. I think this would have shown a little bit better had it been the album closer. I liked it as a single, not as I liked it as a single. I definitely like the other singles more in retrospect, but I think because of where it falls on the album, especially considering for me personally, the last three tracks back to back were really solid. That that Parasite just kind of gets lost in the melee. This will be or is also a very good crowd song. Also, I'm gonna go see Set It Off in like a week, so I'm excited to see like how these songs translate live. I know they're gonna hit well, but I'm interested to see which ones hit harder. And again, I do love Set It Off's commitment to a theme. Commitment again. I think I mentioned before. I really like their visuals on their previous work, their imagery. It's really cohesive and really fun and unique. And I think this song has the best commitment to the bit slash theme in the title reflected in the lyrics out of any song on this album. Just talking about like you're a parasite. It's about we're kind of revisiting this idea of like people or like someone using people or like climbing the social ladder in a not so ethical way. And the line that I wrote down for that is piggybacking sycophant, which something I thought of earlier but didn't mention is that if it's a little it gets a little SAT word in this album where it's like yeah that's like that is a way you could say it, but it does kind of go back to that theatrical point I made earlier about Set It Off and Ice Nine Kills as well, where it's not over the top necessarily in a bad way, but it is a little ridiculous in a way that's fun to enjoy. But speaking of album closers, which again I thought Parasite should be, we have the album closer, track number 12, which is Worst Case Scenarios. Another song I've seen people online really enjoying. I agree it's a solid song. It's one of it goes right in line with me for it goes right in line with what's in it for me and Switch in my opinion. Which is funny because acoustically like sonically sorry yeah sonically it's not like it's a little incongruent with the album. It's a little bit of a ballad, very reminiscent of earlier Set It Off and like their Duality album, again that Why Worry sort of vibe. I think an album closer should be decided sonically, not necessarily content wise, because I think Worst Case Scenarios does a good job of combining all the themes we've explored on this album, so being manipulated, anger, and that self-doubt anxiety theme as well. But I just think we should have flipped this in Parasite because I feel like an album closer needs to sound right more than have the right content. But basically he's just in the song like running in his mind through the worst case scenarios. And my favorite line in this song is the man behind the curtain won't let me out. And that's honestly purely because it just makes me think of The Wizard of Oz. This song exists more in a alt rock, pop rock vibe versus the metal and new metal we were exploring earlier in the album. So I also think that's part of what makes it a little bit sonically incongruous with the album, but I think makes it fit well in the album as a whole. And something I mentioned earlier is I really love when an artist connects newer work, especially something that's meant to be kind of a reset or a really big departure from their previous stuff, is when they connect a song to early work. And so the way this song connects to early Set It Off here is we've got some water slash drowning imagery, which is something they've used a few times, specifically in the Killer in the Mirror music video, and also in Cinematics, which literally that's an album by them, their first album with a label, and the song one of the songs on there is quite literally called I'd Rather Drown. So again, I just kind of like that little bit of insight into how they view the themes and topics that they talk about. The line in this song that has to deal with drowning slash water is mental floodgates open, I always find a way to drown. So like he can't even stop himself from succumbing to the devices of his mind or the worst case scenarios he comes up with. So that is Set It Off by Florida rock band Set It Off. My concluding thoughts. I think my experience was affected by being a Set It Off fan. Had I come into it with fresh eyes, I would have rated it higher, probably. I'm kind of floating right now between like a 2.5 and a 3 out of 5 stars. I feel like 2.5 sounds is too low because I would still listen to this album. I would still seek out songs on this album, but just compared to the rest of Set It Off's discography, it didn't hit the same for me. And a 3, I feel like it was more than a Like to me, a 3 is like it's the same way I rate books. A 3 out of 5 is it's an album. I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend it to you, but if I knew this was a genre you liked, it would probably come up in conversation. I'm not, going out of my way to preach to the people, to the masses about this album. So, experience was definitely a little bit affected by previous experience with Set It Off. But something that I hope someone out there gets this, okay, is the Count. I'm reading the Count of Monte Cristo right now. I've been reading the Count of Monte Cristo for a very long time, but I am reading the Count of Monte Cristo right now, and I believe Set It Off is Count of Monte Cristo music. Okay, the premise of that book is this man who waits years and years and plots to exact his revenge on the people who wronged him. This is what was playing in his mind. Set It Off is what is playing in the Count of Monte Cristo's mind while the events of that book take place. And you cannot convince me otherwise. I definitely think Set It Off have crystallized their sound. For the most part, it is just the three of them. Like I said, Cody Carson has had writing sessions with other people, but for the most part, it's the three of them. Again, Cody sings, Zach plays bass and guitar, and then they've got Max on drums, and then they've got a producer. So the sound is very crystallized. I just think it needs a little bit of refining and streamlining, but it is very clear about what they want the sound to be. And it definitely seems that they, as a band, want to veer into this heavier sound. I enjoy the heavier sound. I just think it's also a little bit of a matter of repetition, as this is their first foray into a album that is fully this heavy metal rap sound. And so it just needs a little bit more like repetition, repetition, repetition. Again, I'm gonna go see them in like a week. And they've been playing these songs live for a while. They've been on this headlining tour for a little bit at least. So maybe hearing them live not only will hear them have them hit better because they're good crowd songs. They're a band that's meant to be heard live, but also because they've had the repetition and time to practice and like find the finesse that these songs need. I do think all three of them bought their A game. I just don't think it was balanced very well from song to song. But each one of them had a moment, or each one of them had a song at the very least where they really shone through. And I think that the linking this album to previous albums really solidified some of the ideas and helped the album be a little bit sturdier than I think it would have been without that connection to their previous sound. Because I don't mind a big step or a big departure from previous sound, especially if it's something that again is the right thing for you to do at that time. But that sound I think also needs to be acknowledged and folded in because it helped build you to where you are, which is something Cody Carson said that I really, really like. I think I watch more interviews that he does than I realize, but I really like the way Cody Carson speaks about music and speaks about the creative process. Something that just the way he approaches songwriting and creating music with the band is something that clicks in my brain and I don't know, I find very easy to understand. And he was talking about how he prefers the trajectory that the band has taken of kind of a steady growth because if you shoot up rapidly, he says the way he explains like your foundation's very short. So because they've had all these years and all these trial and error periods of steady growth, now that they're finally exploring the sound they really want to make on their own terms, they have a really good foundation to work off of. So even like so although in retrospect they could have skipped this, they could have avoided this, they didn't need to go through these trials and tribulations, those trials and tribulations made them the band they are. So in the same way that previous music made this album what it is today, I recommend Set It Off to people sometimes. I don't think they're as popular as they deserve to be. I definitely think they should have a bigger following and fan base. I'm just excited to kind of see them grow from this point, this launching pad that I think they've created for themselves. If you're a fan of any of the genres I mentioned or that this album dabbles in, I would suggest giving it a try, because you'll find elements of any of those genres throughout the album as a whole. It's not just grouped into one song. My top 3 tracks on this album are Switch, What's in It for Me, and Creating Monsters. So I would definitely recommend those if nothing else. But listen to Set It Off's discography. They've had a really, really interesting career path, trajectory, what have you. And I do think they deserve more love, because there is a level of love and authenticity in their craft that I don't find you find in many bands. So thank you for coming along with me. This has been Don't Quote Me on That. I have been Kalina. I will be next week. Sorry, I will be here next week, possibly being insufferable, because 5 Seconds of Summer's new album comes out, and if it's everything I hope it is, you will be hearing. You will know. Okay, so be good. Have a good weekend. Have a good week. I will talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. Don't quote me on that. One day we will have an outro, but it's not today.